So how do you do that? It's very simple. You put powerful CPUs and less powerful CPUs on the same SoC. So that's where you now get the big and the little. Alright, so let's get into the video straight up. Now, there's a concept called the big little. That is big little. Now, why the term big little, and how does it concern SoCs, or rather smartphone CPU cores? This is very simple, because once upon a time, when the whole smartphone era began, most SoCs used a single core CPU. That means that there was only one CPU on the SoC to carry all the work that is being done, to process all the data and all the information on the smartphone. But over time, I think most of these design engineers realized that, you know, two heads are better than one, two good heads. So we then switched from single core SoCs, that's SoCs with only one CPU, to SoCs with two CPUs. So both CPUs would then work together and share the load, and it made the SoC not only more powerful but also more faster, more efficient, and all that. So basically, why have only two CPUs when you can have four? At least that was a brilliant idea someone thought of, and boom, we now have four CPUs on an SoC. That's a quad core SoC, quad 4. It went on like that, and then we moved on to 6, and then we moved on to 8. At some point we had 10. That's deca-core CPUs, as deca-core SoCs. That's 10 CPUs on one SoC. Although that idea was MediaTek's idea, the Helio X series, X standing for 10, and it crashed and burned horribly, and they've abandoned it. I don't know if they'll revisit the idea again. But the Helio X thought, I think, should teach many companies a lot of lessons about, you know, how many CPUs you can have on one SoC, because the Helio X series were not only very hot, I think some people joked about using them as pressing irons at some point. The Redmi Note 4X, the MediaTek version, was very notorious for that. It consumed battery, and it was very inefficient. As soon as the SoC heated up, the phone just started, you know, glitching and all that. So nobody wants a phone that heats up very quickly, glitches and all that. So this is where, like, the concept of, you know, like having CPUs that have a lot of power but wouldn't heat up very much and draw a lot of battery came in. Now, it's actually, I don't know if you're trying to see the paradox here. You want a CPU that is powerful, but the byproducts of a very powerful CPU are going to include heating, are going to include very quick battery drainage. So how do you get a very, very powerful CPU and avoid those? Well, you're going to have to switch to a less powerful CPU that would heat less and consume less battery. But then again, you are going to be trading the higher CPU power of the first CPUs that we've mentioned in order to be able to get, like, you know, cooler phones and less battery consumed. So how do you do that? It's very simple. You put powerful CPUs and less powerful CPUs on the same SoC. So that's where you now get the big and the little. So you've got, like, for most octa-core, that's CPUs with SoCs with 8 CPUs now, they've got like 4 powerful, depends, there are many methods to do this, but I'm going to get into that. Let's just say they've got 4 very powerful CPU cores, and they've got 4 normal, less powerful CPU cores. So we call the very powerful cores the big cores, and we call the ones that do not have a lot of power little cores. Big cores tend to heat up very quickly, and they consume battery as a byproduct of them being able to do very heavy tasks. Small cores, whilst they cannot carry out heavy tasks, can actually, like, you know, manage battery very well and don't heat up as much. So that's where the big little comes in. So how does the big little work? Very simple. If you're on your phone, you're just like scrolling through social media, you're just scrolling through, right? Just scrolling through social media, watching a few videos here and there, watching statuses, going through Facebook. These are tasks that do not require a lot of power. So therefore, the 4 CPUs that are very powerful, the big ones, are going to shut off and stay quiet. They are not in use they stay there. They're just there in the background doing nothing, just like running low key, not doing anything at all, not consuming battery and stuff. They're just there. You're using the 4 small cores now, like they're just doing all your tasks for you. You're answering your calls, you're reading your messages, checking your email and all that. Let's say for some reason you want to do something heavy. You want to edit a video, for example. You want to access IG filters, for example, like the really heavy ones. You want to play PES, PUBG, Fortnite and stuff, like those heavy games and stuff. What happens is that as soon as the operating system, the Android or iOS, notices that you want to carry out or you want to start a very heavy program or very heavy task, what it does is that it tells the little cores that you have been using so far to go to sleep. And so when they go to sleep, that's where the big cores come in, and that's when, like, yeah, we're here, boys, we're here for the task, let's go. Or you want to play PES? We can do it, we can carry the heavy load for you. And so whilst they are there carrying your heavy loads and doing all your heavy tasks, your phone will slowly start to heat up. And then you start noticing that, oh, my phone is heating up. The battery that you've been using, maybe let's say you charge your phone around 8 a.m. in the morning, and by 12 a.m. you've only used 20% out of it. You start to notice that your phone is now at, what, in less than 2 hours, it's at from 80 to 60%. Before you look, it's going to 40%, and you're like, okay, it's enough for this game. I've had enough, I'm leaving this game. Or if you're like me, when they start kicking my tail online and I'm like, I'm not playing anymore, I'm going offline, I'm going to charge my battery, then I'm coming back, kind of thing. So so yeah, as soon as you close the heavy program and you're like, okay, I'm done, I'm not playing anymore, what happens is that those big cores, they then go to sleep and the little cores take over. This is how big little works. So these days it's not usually 4 plus 4, that's 4 big and 4 little. It's mostly 2 big, 6 little, because I think ARM designs are getting like really powerful. You see on SoCs like the Snapdragon 720G, the Snapdragon 732G, the Snapdragon S695 5G. You see that there's 2. Could be Cortex A76 derivatives, could be Cortex A78, and then the rest ones are Cortex A55s or A53s, depends. So you know that those 2 have a lot of power and they can carry the big tasks, and then you just have the remaining 6 just coming in to mop up when there's not really a lot of hard work to be done. So it's not only big little that's the only like design that has been made so far, or the only innovative idea that has been made for SoCs to be able to like achieve that balance between like big cores that can do heavy work and small cores that can stay efficient, stay cool, and consume less battery. Apart from big little, there's also another very innovative idea that's called dynamic. That's DYANMIQ. It's called dynamic. So big little uses 2 clusters, 1 big set of cores, 1 small set of CPU cores, right? But with dynamic, you've got 3 sets of cores. So for the dynamic, you've got the prime core, which is like really powerful. Then you've got big cores, and then you've got little cores. So what the addition of a prime core to the dynamic or to the big little setup to make it a dynamic setup means that smartphone SoCs now have a whole lot more power than they used to have. Now most of the prime cores in use today are the Cortex X1 and the Cortex X2. Like those 2 CPU cores that I have mentioned, those 2 CPU designs from ARM have laptop level power, and so therefore they heat up like crazy. So with the dynamic setup, you've got 1 prime core, usually an X1 or an X2 core. Then you've got big cores, which are the anything between A72, A73 to A78, or A710 rather, if we're going to be going with the new ARM V9 designs. And then finally you've got the small ones, which are the A53, the A55, and the A510s. So that's how it works. I've got saliva stuck in my throat. Okay, so to recap again, there's been a need for a very long time to be able to achieve the balance between having powerful cores and then keeping battery consumption to a minimum level. So that's where you now have like 2 sets or 3 sets of CPUs on an SoC. So the ones for the heavy tasks that only come in to carry out heavy tasks and then go to sleep as soon as their job is done, and the smaller ones that help you carry out the regular stuff you do on your phone. Most of the stuff we do on our phones are regular. It's why sometimes I find it funny when you see people who do nothing more than, you know, like watch videos on their WhatsApp status, start looking for very powerful CPU cores or very powerful SoCs. Like, bro, just stick with your lower mid-range, for example. You don't need to spend all that money. But then again, I'm in no position to tell people how to spend their money. If they want the best CPUs and they're not going to use them, it's their money. Hey, go for it. Spend it the way you like and stuff like that. But just don't make it a deal breaker if that's not the kind of thing for you. Gamers, video producers, content creators, the IG guys, well, you need the most powerful CPU you can afford. Keyword being afford. That's that. So that's it for Big, Little and Dynamic. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you understood it. Please always remember to like, subscribe and leave comments. They help. And if you're the kind of person that likes following up tech stuff, the links to my socials are in the description. Facebook and Telegram, those are the two places you'd find me the most. Once again, I'm Jeffrey. I'm signing out. See ya.